I'm going to hit you with the Mount Rushmore of Ohio State football.
Well, my biggest thing with that is everybody always does offensive players. And if you know the history of Ohio State, you know you need some defensive players in there as well. So I actually go 2 offensive, 2 defensive, no quarterbacks, actually. I go Archie Griffin, James Laurinaitis, Ted Ginn Jr., and Joey Bosa. Joey Bosa, I have an affinity for Joey Bosa that I don't know if anybody else has him on my Mount Rushmore, but I can't get over the 2014 season. I love me some Bosa.
Go, Tony, on that one.
I think AJ
Tony's going to have. Sorry, Tony.
Well,
I know one person that you're going to have. Definitely, he wears the numbers in the 70s and he played in the 90s. That I'm almost positive.
Well,
Tony's going to have there.
Well, and the thing is, when I do my Mount Rushmore, it's Orlando Pace, it's Archie Griffin, it is Chick Harley, and then I don't know who to put fourth. And so, if we're just doing defense, I think Antoine Winfield is going to be there for me. He's the best defender I've ever seen at Ohio State, the best tackler. But I think you got to throw Chris Spielman in there. If you're talking about James Laurinaitis, 3-time All-American, I think AJ Hawk was better. He just didn't have the accolades. So I mean, there's a number. I think Chase Young's 2019 season was better than any defensive end in Ohio State history. But Joey Bosa kind of started that entire line. I think Nick Bosa, if he had stayed healthy in 2018, would have been fantastic. Willie Cooker's 2016 is the best individual season until Chase Young. So I don't know, Kevin. What do you got?
I mean, I think everybody's going to have their own level of recency bias. I mean, Tony's trying to fight that by having Chick Harley from back in 1955, and I get that. I mean,
he got the stadium built.
I mean, yeah, exactly. Well, I don't disagree, and I don't think that you can just limit it down to 4 players for Ohio State. And I've seen a lot of people just kind of try and sidestep it by putting Woody Hayes on their on their Mount Rushmore and just say, well, it's because I can't make a decision. But yeah, I mean, not to go against the new guy and sit there and bag on JR, but it's criminal that you don't have Orlando Pace on there. Orlando Pace is by far, in terms of his position and what he was able to do and redefining the position, was the best college football player that I've ever seen in my life. And it certainly doesn't hurt that certainly, I'm 52. That was my era. While I really like what James Laurinaitis did, I think that I could probably come up with 3 or 4 other linebackers that I would probably have higher. I mean, is anybody talking about Eddie George, what Eddie George meant in terms of what his career was? But then again, if I talk to people who are 20 years younger than me, they want to put Zeke Elliott on there. I mean, I don't know.
Ryan Shazier was awesome.
I'm not going to get pinned down on putting 4 faces on the side of a mountain, because I could give you one today and then you could ask me again tomorrow and I'd forget who I said today and give you 3 different names on there. I mean, certainly one constant is going to be Orlando Pace.
Well, so maybe instead of a Mount Rushmore, it's like an LED screen or like a big billboard that just changes every few minutes. Like today's Mount Rushmore are these 4 players, and then you just kind of slide them down a little bit.
Ohio State has had so much success and so many great players through the year. I think that not only do you need an offensive and a defensive Mount Rushmore, to hell with that, you need position group Mount Rushmores where you're taking 4 per position group. And if you don't really want to get too fancy with that, you could just put DBs and D-line together as opposed to having ends and tackles and corners and safeties or whatever. And maybe you throw tight ends in with receivers. And sorry, tight ends, you're probably going to get shut out.
Throw them in with the offensive linemen. You could honestly do positions by decade as well. You can break it down like that if you want. There's a lot of rocks around. You can go ahead and carve out.
I have produced a top 10 Ohio State quarterback list. I've never tackled the Mount Rushmore, and I'm with Kevin on that. That is just too difficult for me.
So who you got? Who you got, Mark? Right now, who you got?
Grind it down to 4. I will say this. This may be blasphemy, so pardon me on this one. But if we're just forget the accomplishments, if we're just talking about the 4 best players in Ohio State history, I don't think Archie Griffin would be on my Mount Rushmore.
I mean, if you look at the numbers, I mean, Antonio Pittman had better numbers a couple of years, one of those years. And Pete Johnson got all the touchdowns. So I'm with you there, but in terms of history, like it's kind of he's a shoe in. But if you take him off, like come on, Mark, don't tell me who's not on it. Tell me who's on it.
Okay, who's on it off the top of my head? Wow. I'm going to go Orlando Pace, Randy Gradishar, if we're going to go with a linebacker, and that's a tough choice. And I'm going to go with, man, I would have to look at wide receiver numbers because
Marvin?
what these guys, what the recent guys are doing. But you got to take era into consideration because was anybody better than Chris Carter? And if you adjust, time adjust, era adjust the numbers, Chris Carter at wide receiver. And I hate to go to the linebacker core again, but Chris Spielman. We haven't said that name. That might be my 4.
See, you guys do it differently than I do. I do it with like the 4 players that I just have the most affinity for for Ohio State that obviously were also really good and beat Michigan. That's one of the reasons why I can't put CJ Stroud on mine is because he never beat Michigan. You know, he was on the no, he wasn't on the team that year, but yeah, that's how I've always done it. It's just who's like my 4 Ohio State Buckeyes that I have the most affinity for. And obviously, like Kevin said, there's recency bias there.
Oh, well, Art Schlechter is my favorite player in the history of the program. So he's going to be on my Mount Rushmore then, first and foremost. If we're going with affinity. Oh, there's been all sorts of guys that just I like that I just think are cool. Like Kenyon Rambo. I'm going to throw him on my Mount Rushmore. I just liked him. Michael Jenkins.
Nobody's talked about Bill Willis. I mean, there are so many players that have been so, groundbreaking and everything else that, I mean, again, it is an impossible task. And I really, when I see people post them on X, formerly known as Twitter, I generally try not to comment because I'm too cowardly to put my own out there because I'm just not going to. So I try to keep my comments to a minimum because I know that it is a task that I cannot successfully complete.
We left off a few Heisman Trophy winners, Paul Warfield. Yeah, exactly. So we could keep going and going and going. JR, we appreciate you being here. We look forward to seeing your work here at the Voice for College Football, Ohio State. And have a great day, sir.
Thanks, guys. You too.